Okay, so this is just a little review of how the tritone works in functional harmony, in bebop harmony, and what we call the tritone mirror. So first of all, it's important to understand that the octave divides evenly in half at the tritone. Furthermore, the tritone divides in half again at the minor third. And here. So there's a diminished chord that divides the octave equally into 4 parts. So if we look at the most basic use of the tritone as a form of substitution in harmony, if we take our G7 chord, and the 3rd and the 7th are our guide tones that provide the chord with its functionality. If we move the basic tritone away from a G to a D flat, the 7th of the G chord becomes the 3rd of the D flat chord, and the 3rd of the G chord becomes the 7th of the D flat chord. So they invert. 3rd becomes 7th, 7th becomes 3rd. Furthermore, if we take, for example, a G Mixolydian 7 chord, right, a plain old 13 chord, where we have our guide tones and our 9 and our 13, and then we move a tritone away, now we have 7th becomes 3rd, 3rd becomes 7th, and here's where it gets interesting. The consonant 9th becomes the dissonant sharp 5, and the consonant 13 becomes the dissonant sharp 9. So in that way, by maintaining this upper structure, which is our Mixolydian grip, right? Mixolydian becomes altered. And the resolutions can go like this, from G to C, or from D flat to C. For the same reason that either of these dominant chords can resolve to C, both of these dominant chords also, in the tritone mirror, can resolve in a different direction. So for example, for the same reason that a D flat 7 chord can resolve down by half step, this G7 chord can also resolve down by half step to F sharp. So from the standpoint of a composer who's looking for ways of getting around to different keys, this is important to remember, that a dominant chord can resolve down traditional 5 to 1, but it can also resolve down by half step. So let's try instead of a tritone substitution, let's try a minor third substitution. So instead of G13, let's go down a minor third. This is really kind of a Phrygian sounding chord, right? So if we look at the way that the notes have inverted, the middle of the road 7th becomes the flat 9 here. The consonant natural 9 becomes the 4th degree in E. This 3rd becomes the 5th, stays pretty middle of the road. And the 13 actually becomes the root. So this isn't the greatest voicing to use, but it shows the functionality of how it works. And it shows that with this tritone sitting here, we can still make E Phrygian resolve to C. So we can resolve down by major third. Now if we flip it in the tritone mirror again, from E and go to B flat, this is where we get the most dissonant version of this, because these notes really kind of flip out in the tritone mirror. But the 7th becomes the 5th, so it stays pretty middle of the road. The 9th becomes the major 7. It's not a dominant chord, but it's going to function like that, as you'll see in a second. The middle of the road 3rd here becomes the flat 9, dissonant, and the 13 here becomes the flat 5. So here, this is kind of a weird B flat chord, but it can still resolve up by whole step to C. Right, so here it is again. And that really gives us kind of a non-traditional sounding chord, which could be an interesting harmonic use. So now we see that these dominant chords, or let's call them synthetic dominant chords in some cases, can resolve down by a 5th. They can resolve down by a half step. They can resolve down by a major 3rd, or they can resolve up by a whole step. And if we were to go through every possible note and extension for example, in G, and we flipped it through all those different tritone variations, we would discover that there's an inverted relationship always, and frequently the more dissonant a note is in one on one side of the mirror, the more consonant it is on the other. And the closer they are to the center, the closer they are to the guide tones, the more likely they are to stay kind of neutral as they invert. Another interesting thing to look at here is if we were in the key of C, and let's say that we were going to play 5 of 5 to 5 to 1. So if I played 5 of 5 here, so here's D7, and then I went to G13, and then resolved to 1. Well, if I flipped the D in the tritone mirror to A flat, I could get this altered A flat 7 chord, which is a half step above the 5-7 chord, resolving to 1. So, in my class we call this the sidestep 5, but it's important to remember that this sidestep 5 is really the tritone substitution to the 5 of 5. And we could do the same thing in a 2-5-1. And a great example would be to listen to Sonny Rollins improvising in the late 50s, where he was not just playing tritone substitutions on the 5 chords, but he was playing full-on 2-5-1s, 2 minor 7 to 5-7, a tritone away. So he might play, so D minor to G7, and then go straight to A flat, right, and play it here. And then resolve it to C. So again, we're kind of stretching the boundaries of what is permissible by what sounds good based on just the interior logic of the way that the harmony works. So we could take a tune like, let's do rhythm changes. And if we play rhythm changes, and let's do it in C just for clarity, right? So if I play C and then I go to that dominant 6 chord, right? So if I go to the dominant 6 chord, and then I would play 2-5-1. If I flipped the 6 chord in the tritone mirror, I could play it instead of A, I could play it E flat. So here we have this. And if I went even further and also made the 5 chord a tritone substitution, we could go, here's our C chord, here's the tritone sub of the 6 chord, we'll put that here, and then we're going to go and play our 2 chord, and then we're going to play our tritone sub, and then resolve it finally. So and you'll notice that the tritone sub is a minor third above, which is what we were talking about last week in Fee Fi Fo Fum with that Coltrane reference. So the giant steps thing really is, this is to go up a minor third and play a dominant chord is a tritone away from the 6 chord, which is really, and the 6 of course, as a dominant chord is the secondary dominant to the 2. So it's really 5 of 5 of 5. But we can reduce the whole thing using tritone substitution to play instead of. So that's just an example of what's possible with the tritone substitution and the tritone mirror, and expanding that into also the minor third substitutions. So I hope this was helpful, and I'm going to post this on YouTube as soon as I can.